I'm Mark Jackson, a Vulcan Park Foundation board member and the Honorary Consul General of Japan. I have the pleasure of introducing today's special guest. I have a personal history here at Vulcan. In fact, my family history is all over this hill, all over this mountain. The stones, the rocks, the boulders that make up the pedestal actually came out of my great-great-grandfather's farm up in Bluff Park eons ago. My mother, a Trammell herself, the store here is modeled after her father's commissary over in Overton. I serve on the board of directors here. This is a great place. This is where my family history is. And today we get a chance to expound on that and celebrate something that most people never knew was here. We're very happy that you are able to join us for this exciting new adventure here at Vulcan Park Museum. The reopening of the Lone Pine Mine, number 3. The Lone Pine Mine installation has been made possible with support from the Alabama Historical Commission, the Alabama Power Foundation, Community Foundation of Greater Birmingham, the Daniel Foundation, Joseph S. Bruno Charitable Foundation, Stone Building Company, and the Susan Mott Webb Charitable Trust. With their support, we're able to reopen this mine's interest. It is now open for visitors to peek inside, but only a peek. You cannot go inside this mine. But inside, through peeking, you'll see period-appropriate artifacts and replicas from the time the mine was used and signage outlining the mine's history. Today's program, Vulcan Underground, Unearthing Local Mining History, will be led by one of my favorites, Underground Birmingham, and the Underground Birmingham historians, Jeff Newman and Josh Box. I'm sure you will leave with more knowledge about Birmingham's history of mining than you ever thought that you would even want to know. Folks, Vulcan Park and Museum is a 501c3 organization, and we rely on supporters like you. Please go to visitvulcan.com/support for more details on a way to give to this historically important symbol of Birmingham. And trust me, this symbol is known all around the world, ultimately important for this city. Today's presentation is designed to be interactive, so please post any questions in the chat. Now, great pleasure. I'll turn this over to Jeff and Josh. Gentlemen?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Yes, sir.
Well, my name is Jeff Newman. I've lived here in Birmingham all of my life. In fact, I grew up just about half a mile west of here. So I've been spending the last 50 years or so, since 1966, coming up here on the mountain and exploring the old Birmingham Mineral Railroad grade and a lot of the old mining sites that are along the mountain. The first thing I'd like to do, though, is really thank Vulcan Park and Museum for allowing us to come up here today and to share some of this with you, and to particularly share in the reopening of the Lone Pine Mine. When I used to come up here in 1966, before they had done all the remodeling on the towers and all of that, this mine was wide open. And so we would come up here every Saturday to visit Vulcan, and we would wander off into the mine. Of course, we'd get dirty and we'd go home, and Mom would say, "You've been in the mine again," and she'd spank me, but that didn't do any good. I was coming back. So anyway, that has led to a 50-year passion that I've had for exploring mines in the mining history here in Birmingham. A few years ago, I met Josh, and he had a particular interest also, so after vetting him for about 6 months, getting FBI checks and all of that, I've allowed him to come along with me. So welcome Josh Box here today also.
So I hate that I have to go last because I have to follow up from Mark. Now I have to follow up from Jeff. Look, I'm just an urban explorer. I enjoy abandoned stuff. I've been exploring the mines for probably about 15 years. With Jeff's knowledge, history, it always intrigued me to find out more. And there's not a better guy, because this guy says 1966. 1866. This guy is ancient.
I wish.
I do want to preface this with saying look, mines were not designed to stand forever, right? So what we do is stupid. Do not go into the mines. It's very dangerous. If you know there's inherent risks that you can face from drowning, rock falls, getting lost. Look, it's happened. You know, we've been turned around several times. It's very dangerous. Our wives do not want us to do it, but you know it's just something that just keeps bringing us back. I would say, I mean, if you are dumb enough like us, exercise caution, be safe. But be smart and do not go in these things. It's dangerous.
And we do carry with us air quality testing equipment when we go in the mines. So we take the appropriate safety measures. We do contact the property owners before we go into their property. A lot of the owners like to go with us when we go. So when we're out exploring something, we have taken every measure we can to notify the owners, have them go along with us. Unfortunately, over a couple of places on the mountain, could not ever find anybody, so we just kind of...
All right, enough of this chit-chat. Come check this out, guys.
Yeah.
This is open for visitors to come see. It's amazing. I mean, this is a beautiful piece right here. And Jeff's going to give you guys some history about it. I'm just here for the looks.
Yeah, the Lone Pine Mine, this dates back to 1900. The Birmingham Mineral Railroad Red Gap branch was constructed between 1888 and 1890. Which ran from Red Gap in Irondale over to Grace's Gap in Ishkuda. So once that rail line was finished, mining all along this part of Red Mountain began. So Lone Pine, from the best information that we could find, and there's a lot of information out there that we still haven't located, so if you have something that's kind of disagrees with what we've said, we'd love to hear it, because we're only working off what we've found. But what we have found is that in 1900, a company called Birmingham Ore Company started mining here at Lone Pine. Next door at the Valley View with the Central Coal and Iron, Birmingham Ore and Mining Company was mining the Valley View in 1900. Also, you had in 1903, just to the west of here, about a quarter of a mile at Parton's Gap, you had Will McFarland and Company was leasing property from the Webb family and the Woods family for a period of 5 years to mine iron ore over there. So that's kind of the beginning of the mining in this area around 1900. They mined, oh, I got a new flashlight and I don't know how to work it yet. Better put it up. So anyway, mining here at this location lasted basically from 1902 up until 1908 or 1910. This was one of the first areas that they mined. They were going in here to check the seam for quality and thickness of the ore, and the vast majority of the mining was done on top of the mountain between here and V Club, where they strip mined and did drift mining into the ore seam going down into the mountain. But what we're going to show you today is the Lone Pine number 3 mine, and let you see inside and see some of the things that the miners used as they would work here. So,
And I just want to say, this lighting that you guys did, we're going to have to hire you to come to the mines with us. I mean, we just come in here with flashlights and everything. I mean, they've got this. I mean, it just looks so eerie. I mean, it's amazing what they did.
So you can see, as we're saying, you can look at the ceilings, and you can see right over there you've got some shale and some Virginia sandstone that is breaking loose from the ceiling. That's one of the reasons you don't want to just wander around in these mines, because you never know when that stuff's going to start coming down. But also over here on the side you can see the iron ore seam along the edge of the wall where they were cutting into it. Here they were mining the big seam of the red iron ore formation through Birmingham. Some of this it looks like it's down maybe into the Irondale seam because of the way the composition of the ore is spread out in there. But one thing that we've got over here is you've got some tools and things that the miners would have been using. Back in the very, very early days, they were using these oil lamps to light the mining. And of course, it's basically just a candle, so they weren't getting a whole lot of light. so it made it very difficult. But they had very small oil lamps like this that would actually mount onto the front of the miners' helmets. And so you're walking around with a cloth miner's cap on, and you've got a flame on the top of your cap, and I'm wondering how many people set their caps on fire. But later though, the oil lamps were replaced by carbide, which was much better, provided a brighter light for a longer period of time. And so they went to these little carbide lights. And then occasionally scattered throughout the mine, they would have just your standard oil lamp hanging on the wall just to help provide lighting. Most of the mining here back in those days was all just done
Picks and
by,
shovels.
yeah, by hand. It was very basic. They would use picks, they would use shovels, pry bars, they would use hand drills, and a little dynamite. And most of the iron ore and product was moved around using mules. So you had mules in the mines pulling the mine cars out of the mine and then back into the mines.
And Jeff, I want to go back to this. I don't know if you guys can zoom in. You can see the gap, the space in between that right there. That was one of the main causes of death working in the iron ore mines. So in the 50s, especially the TCI mines, they came and they installed these roof bolts, these long,
Yeah, it was roof bolts.
about six. And after they installed the roof bolts and things to that nature, I don't believe there were any more deaths from rock falls. But of course, the mines didn't stay in operation, much longer.
Yeah, they basically used the roof bolts in the main slopes back into the work headings off of the main slopes. Those areas were not expected to be worked for very long periods of time, so they would tend to use wooden supports, and once they would mine those areas out, they would just let them collapse in behind them. But the roof bolts really did save a lot of lives. Most of the people in the iron ore mines were killed by falling rock or being crushed between pieces of equipment. It was not nearly as dangerous as working in the coal mines, where you had to deal with methane gases and things like that that could choke you or explode and kill 50 people real quick. One note is over at one of the mines, Iscuda number 13, Mayor Bell's grandfather was killed in that mine along with 8 other people in a roof fall way back. So yes, it's very dangerous in here. You never know when these pieces of rock are going to fall. Another thing they used in the mines was dynamite. We found old dynamite boxes in the mines. Fortunately, we haven't found any dynamite, but they would drill holes in the wall. We've got a picture of a drill over here. This is a drill that they would similarly use, where they would hold it and they would drill into the wall. Then they would push their load of dynamite into the hole, back up, light the fuse, and run. And then they would shoot it. They would come in, they would hand load the ore into the wagons, and then the mules would pull it out. So they were using drills like that, and then the picks and shovels, and this is an old pry bar. But yes, they did use dynamite in the mines also. Later in the 1920s, they started to replace a lot of the handwork with mechanized machinery, which made it a lot easier and made it more economical, and they could produce more iron ore.
Yeah, now the using of the dynamite, I mean, it was to create, work headings where they could come in and they could mine, but also where they could create airflow to make sure that the air is circulating the way that they needed it to do. If it's blocked off here, you need the air to come this way, you blast open a hole, the air flows the way you want it to flow. Then they have it controlled with these big fans. And all the mines are, self-ventilated, so that's another question that we have. We do carry oxygen meters, things of that nature, but these mines are self-ventilated.
Yeah, in the 1880s and back in the 1860s during the Civil War, when they were mining here, most of the mines were strip mined along the crest of the mountain, and if they did get into the ore seam, they would be doing drifts down into the ore, and the tunnels would come out in the ravines on either side of these little fingers going down the hill, and those openings would just create a natural ventilation. So the powered ventilation actually really came important when they started doing the slope mines down into the ground, in order to force that air that would get trapped and get stale down in there to circulate it and get it back out. So you will hear that a lot of the mines were self-ventilating, but that was in the very early days.
Jeff's about to blow your mind too. So talk about the extent, Jeff, from where it would start, go all the way under shades.
Yeah, the way the iron ore is laid out here in Birmingham, you'll hear people say, wow, there are iron ore mines under downtown Birmingham. No, I'm sorry, they're not. The way the iron ore seam is laid out here, you have Red Mountain running along through here. The iron ore is on a 23 to 35 degree dip going from you've got the top of the mountain, the ore comes out on top of the mountain, it just sticks out of the ground. So what they would do is, first thing is they would strip that off the top. Then they would put in a slope mine and they would start following that ore down the dip of the ore into the ground. Some of these mines, you had geological faults, so as you went further to the east, so some of those mines aren't quite as deep as some in the west, but some of the ones out near Ishkuta, Winona, Muskota, those mines start at the top of Red Mountain and go 2.5 to 3 miles out under Shades Mountain. So you were working really far back. Now, compared to some of today's modern coal mines, a 2.5 mile mine slope is very small. But back in those days, that was a big deal.
And I think picks and shovels, 2.5 miles.
Yeah, so they were doing that. And the way they do it is you put your main slope in, and about every 80 to 100 feet down the main slope, you would turn off a work heading that would go out and actually where you're going to get the ore out of. Now, I'd like to walk over here and I'll just show you kind of what I'm talking about. This is the way the mines were laid out. You have your crest of the mountain where the ore seam is outcropping. This is where they would come through. They would strip mine all of the ore off the top that they could get. Once they did that, then if there was a ravine going down the side, they would follow the outcrop down the ravine and they would do drift mines back into the sides of the hill. When they couldn't do that anymore, they would put in a main slope. The main slope would run down the dip of the ore, and then every 80 to 100 feet, you would turn off a work heading. And you can see these are numbered 1L, 1R, 2L, 2R, so that's 2 left, 2 right, 3 left, and so forth as far as they go. Now this was an old Woodward mine. This was probably around 1917. The mine didn't go very far. Eventually this mine ended up going way on down. So this is just a small mine, but it gives you the picture of how these mines were laid out. So if you envision this, starting at Green Springs Highway in Shades Valley, going all the way to Highway 150 in Bessemer, and you have, it's just honeycombed with these tunnels the entire distance. One day you're gonna wake up in your basement if all of this collapses. But the good thing though, is this is about 14 to 1,800 feet below ground out in Shades Valley. So if it did collapse, it would never work its way to the to the surface. You would never know it. But anyway, I just wanted to show you that to sort of give you a little idea of how the tunnels were actually laid out.
Yeah, so when you come up here to Lone Pine, use this as visualization to, just picture what was going on in here.
Also, you could, since we're close down the road here from the club, one of the big mine producers in this section was the Valley View Mine. And if for a moment you just envision, okay, this is the Valley View Mine, and this is the club. So the club is actually sitting on top of abandoned mine slopes over there. At that point, those tunnels are probably 60 to 80 feet below the parking lot. So they are a bit closer to the surface than some, but it still shouldn't be a problem. Now, they took care of that with foundations and all when they built it. But they do build things on top of these mines. You won't see much, but there's a little bit out there.
Right. But this, this mine is just incredible. for you guys to spend the time to open up the history for everyone to see. So I mean, look, this is open for the public. So, you know, come up here and check it out. It's well worth coming up here to see. I mean, they've got the lighting, they've got everything in here. It's beautiful. It's one of the nicest projects that I've seen, you know, through completion. It's really nice.
They have a very nice museum upstairs that has photographs, it has more artifacts, it tells a little more in-depth history. They have a replica company store up there. So you can come out here, you can go in the museum, you can get a history of it. You can come down here and stand at the gates and you can look inside. You can feel the cool air, because when it's 90 degrees outside and this 60-degree air is coming out, that's a really nice place to be standing there. Support Vulcan Park and Museum in what they're doing. Donate to their cause, because it's because of them and their dedication to the history that this mine has been reopened and people will get a chance to see it.
Hit us with some questions, guys. What do y'all have?
All right, one question that we have was, like, what is the difference between mining for iron ore versus coal? Or limestone even, because...
Okay, well, we'll start with the limestone because it's the one that's the most different. Most of the limestone mining here in Birmingham, the limestone formation basically is running between Red Mountain and this is called East Red Mountain, and you have on the other side of North Birmingham is West Red Mountain, because this whole thing used to just be one mountain and it's all worn down, and now you have the valley in between. Well, you have the iron ore on Red Mountain. The limestone is in this underneath the city of Birmingham, running from out past Pinson, down through Tarrant, down through Birmingham. It goes down through Helena, Calera, and all the way down into Shelby County. So that's where your limestone is. And basically it is mined through quarries. There were, I think, 2 mines here in Birmingham where they actually did underground mining in some of the old abandoned iron ore slopes to get some limestone. But the majority of limestone is quarried. The difference between iron ore and coal, the techniques for mining, especially in the early days, were very similar. It was all handwork, picks, shovels, little dynamite, mules, just handwork like that. The big difference between the mines was the conditions. The coal mines, you had to deal with black damp, you had to deal with methane gases that would explode and can kill you. So there were a lot more inherently dangerous to be in coal mines. But technically, mining it was basically the same thing. The tools were a little different because the iron ore is harder, the coal is much softer, so you could mine it differently from that aspect. But really it's not that much different in the techniques. Now today in the coal mines, they use what they call long wall mining. They set up a big machine, it looks like a big saw blade, and it just runs down through there and mines the seam. So today mining technically is much different than coal mining as to iron ore mining. A lot of the iron ore mining in the United States now is done up in the Mesabi areas of North America, and they use, I think they use a lot of quarry up there for that. So that's kind of the difference in the short term. We could stand here and talk about all this stuff for a month. But,
So one question we have, what's the most unexpected thing you have discovered in a mine?
whoa.
All right.
Well,
I'll take mine first. This was before I met Jeff. I was in a mine and I kept hearing this noise. Come to find out, it was a bobcat. The bobcat was stalking me through the mine.
Oh.
So we've got a buddy of ours. You know, when he comes, before he goes into a mine, he has a can of hairspray and he has a lighter before he even pokes his head. You know, he'll light it up that way if there's, you know, any animals or anything like that, you know, they'll get scared and back away. But being stalked by a bobcat in a mine, it was pretty crazy. But I've also had some paranormal experiences. Yes, I do paranormal stuff. You know, some of you guys like it, some of you don't. But you know, there are, and hey, look, if you guys do paranormal stuff, yeah, come up here and check this one out. I mean, this is open. If there are any spirits in here trapped, you know, you never know what you can find.
Well, I'm not a total disbeliever. I have an open mind, but Josh and I were in one of the mines one day, and he had his equipment with him, and he's talking to the spirits in there, and he's getting answers back on his machine and stuff. And so he's asking one of the questions, where are you? And we're sitting there, and it's just quiet. And then all of a sudden, out of the little machine, it says 9. And I went, 9? And so I'm just standing there looking around, and I take my flashlight and turn around, and on the wall behind me is the number 9 spray painted on the wall, because we were at the number 9 work heading. Now that was kind of chilling.
Yeah.
So I thought, oh, okay, well, that's cool, you know. So, but anyway.
So what's
Well, I tell you,
tell us your experience.
the most, I've seen a lot of raccoons' eyes following me through mines, but the most I get, and this is probably on the deep end, is a body.
Ooh.
Back in, when we started this back in the 1960s, the kids in our neighborhood, we were up here on Red Mountain and we were exploring. And fortunately for me that day, I had gone to the movies, but the rest of the group came up on the mountain. They were walking down the haulage way from the hoist house going down to the mine opening, and they were looking and they said, "What's that down there? It looks like a dog." And when they got to the mine opening, it was a 13-year-old boy. He had been beat to death. So they called the police. The police came out and investigated it. And fortunately, they caught the guy that did it that afternoon.
Wow.
He was stoned out of his mind, and he jumped off the wall over here by Vulcan onto a moving car.
Oh my God.
So that was the most disturbing thing, and I guess unusual thing that our exploration group had ever found. Personally, I guess would be the raccoons, but what I really like finding is old artifacts. We found an 1886 whiskey bottle in a mine that opened around 1889, and so that was pretty cool to think that that bottle had been sitting there for over 100 years in that mine. But we found a lot of tools. We find carbide lights. We find very interesting things in the mines. So yeah, I really enjoy doing this, and yes, absolutely, like Josh said, it's dangerous. You shouldn't be doing it, but people have their, like I said, this has become a passion for me to explore this and share this history with people in Birmingham that a lot of the younger people have no idea it's here. And we're not encouraging you to go out and try to find these mines and go in them, but we do want you to understand the history that built Birmingham, and study it, and go to the research departments downtown in the library, in the archives. They've got tons of interesting stuff down there, and you may find some new stuff we haven't learned and can teach us something, because we're always open to learning about new things that we don't know.
Speaking of research, you know, we couldn't do this without Bob Ewell, Thomas Denny, some of the best guys, most knowledgeable people we know that help a lot more behind the scenes, you know, to help uncover all this history.
You know, a lot of the dates and the companies that mine some of these places, we understand those things now because of Bob Ewell and Thomas spending so much time traveling around to libraries and doing stuff online, that we could tell you about the mechanics of it, but they're teaching us and sharing with us the specific dates and the names and all of that. And so we all put it together and then share it together. So yeah, Thomas Denny and Bob Ewell are outstanding assets to Underground Birmingham. We couldn't do this without them.
And speaking of, you know, the library, you know, I mean, funding is being cut, you know, so it's becoming harder and harder to be able to obtain the research and the information. I believe I saw a report that the Birmingham Library, every single bit of the funding is being cut. So you know that's you know, if you guys want to reach out to whomever, you know, let's see if we can change their minds a little bit. And you know, same thing with Vulcan. I mean, you know, funding is being cut for Vulcan. You know, so you know, they rely on, you know, everyone to help keep this place going. You know, they spent a lot of money to open this up, so you guys can come up here and enjoy it. And you know, come up here and enjoy it. You know, leave a donation. Check out the gift shop. They've got some cool shirts, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, there's a lot of places around the area. You have Tannehill you have Ruffner Mountain, you have Red Mountain Park. All of those people are involved in trying to preserve and share the history of what went on here in Birmingham. And so you need to go out and support all of those people if you can. Go visit them, put donations in the donation boxes, and support them however you can. We really encourage that.
We'll try to throw a donation link up on the page too, so just click that, check it. I believe it's tax deductible.
So, yes, it is.
Okay. So, write it off on your taxes.
Yeah, were there any other questions?
Yeah, we have a couple of more that came in. One, how were the drills powered in drift mines like Lone Pine?
The drills were powered by steam-powered air compressors in the early days. So you would have a steam-powered compressor machine that would, I'm old and my tongue just shuts down on me sometimes. But you'd have the steam-powered boilers that would produce the steam that would turn the compressors to make the air to run the drills. And so that's how the drills were operated in the early days. Later on, all of those things became electric-powered as in the 1920s. But yeah, the early days, everything, the hoist engines, the pumps, and all of that stuff were run by steam-powered machinery.
I'm looking on my phone to see if I have a photo that I can show you guys.
Yeah, if you go over to Red Mountain Park and go to the number 10 mine, there's an air compressor over there at the number 10 mine. It was part of Hardy Tynes Manufacturing Corporation back here when they were building these machines to be used in the mines all the way from the 1800s up until the mid-1900s. So that was donated to the park, and that one's an electric-powered compressor, but the design of the compressor itself is the same as it would have been with a steam-powered one.
I gotta tell them the story. All right, so Jeff and I going to Hardy Tynes. I'm like, I gotta climb that water tower. I mean, I know you guys have seen the iconic water tower. Hardy Tynes is now painted with
Don't climb the towers.
Yeah, don't climb the towers. It's now painted with U-Haul. But I'm like, hey, I'm gonna go over there and just knock on the door, see if they'll let me climb it. And they said, sure, go ahead. So we photographed the place. I climbed the tower. Jeff's like, hey, what are you doing with that compressor? And they're like, I'm just gonna throw it away. You want it? So that's how the compressor came to be at Red Mountain Park. Hardy Tynes, they donated it to the park with.
Yeah, I called my boss on the phone real quick and I said, hey, they want to donate a compressor to the park. You want it? And he said, absolutely. So fortunately across the street was Crane Works. So I walked across the street to Crane Works and I said, hey, can you come across the street and give me a cost estimate for moving this thing to the park? So they came over and they looked at it and they gave us an estimate for it, and it was reasonable. And so they came over one day and they loaded it, carried it to the park. Bob Ewell, my friend, who was a steam engine locomotive repair guy, he put it back together for us so it would look right. But it ended up that Crane Works cut us an extremely generous donation in moving that bit of equipment over there. So I think we ended up with a total of about $250 in acquiring that and moving it to the site and setting it up.
Yeah, so it's all these businesses helping out to keep this history alive. Now the light just went out. I guarantee you it's a ghost. Yeah. It's a ghost. What was the other question?
Are you able to find artifacts from the small mine villages where miners lived?
Yes, we can. Some of the mine villages are still in existence. A lot of the mine villages are no longer there. At Red Mountain Park, if you're over there and you're walking down the EMRR South Trail at the park west towards Bessemer, the miners' camp houses were on the left side of the trail down in there. Tennessee Coal and Iron built those houses back in there starting in the 1800s, and that's where the miners were living. But in the early 1900s, as TCI improved their equipment, they started moving all of their machinery from the south to the north side of the mountain. So around 1902, 1900, they started building new houses over in Ishkuda and Winona, and they disassembled all of those houses over in the Ishkuda community within Red Mountain Park. So you can go down in there now and you can see occasionally you see the brick foundations where the chimneys were, And we've had archaeological teams that have gone in there and done scientifically correct excavations, and they found a lot of artifacts down in those mining camp areas. So yes, there's a lot of things out there still to be found in the camps. So.
And normally, when we find the stuff, we donate it to the nearest museum that's, as close as possible. Like, the stuff you see in here, I mean, this is authentic to the area, the stuff that was mined in this area. This was the stuff that was found nearest to these mines. So when you come up here, that's some of the stuff that was used in these actual mines. Now, you might have some questions about this sign right here. Because you come up here, this is going to be the first thing you see when you look through. So this is what they would call brass in and brass out. So you would keep, whenever you clocked in for work, you'd have your little mine number, and you would brass into the mine. And that's how they knew that you were inside the mine working.
And in the very early days, when you would go to work, you were paid per mine car of ore that you mined. So you would have multiple tags like this. You would have one on your body that's attached there, so if something happened in the mine and the roof fell on you, they could identify who you were.
Right.
But you also had them in your pocket, and when you would fill up a mine car full of ore, you would attach one of these to the mine car. And when it was pulled out of the mine, the man in the tally house would take that tag, and then he could record that towards your pay. And so he would record that, but then also you did have the one on the board, so if something did happen or somebody came by, they know who's in the mine at all times.
Right.
So, and these are still in use today. We went to visit an underground limestone mine in Tennessee.
The Franklin mine from Vulcan Materials.
Yeah, they were kind enough to give us a tour, and they're still using this system today in the mines up there. So this is not something that's gone. They're still doing it.
And we have one question related to that. Well, they want to know how much iron ore was mined in a day, typically.
Oh gosh, well, that all depended on
Depends on the mine.
It depended on the year they're mining, whether they're doing it with picks and shovels. A lot of mines, 50 tons a day was good back when they were doing it with picks and shovels and dynamite. And, but as mechanically it started to change, it got up to 500 tons a day. Then it'd get up to 1,500 tons a day once they got mechanized with machinery just going in there and just ripping stuff out. And so, yeah, you could get maybe 1,500 tons a day in some of the mines. And of course, it all varied too on the demand for the iron, and that changed radically very often. They would open and close mines. Reopen them and close them, just depending upon the demand.
There's World War I. It's open a mine.
Yeah,
World War
so
II.
They had just practically all the mines were operating during the World War periods because of the demand. We provided about 10% of the iron for the war efforts during the war from Birmingham, Alabama. But yes, the amount daily changed, could change by the day.
And one of the main reasons, there's really no more iron ore mining in the city is you have geologic faults, but the content was not as pure, and it became too much to even mess with. So I mean, it's all outsourced. Brazil, I believe.
Yeah, of course, you always hear the thing that Birmingham is the only place in the world where you had the three ingredients that you needed to make iron. You had the coal, the limestone, and the iron ore. Well, I recently met a man from Great Britain who worked in the coal mines. He's a coal mining engineer. He actually helped here with the Vulcan project. And he said Birmingham is not the only place in the world. There is a place, Cumbria, in Great Britain, that has the same three materials. So that's one. It's funny to me because that's one of his little sticky points. Every time he sees that written down somewhere, he wants to write on it and go, no, it's not. But that was true. And our ore quality here was about 35 to maybe 50%. So the ore quality was not that good. But since we had iron ore and limestone and coal, you could stand here and you could see all three of those mines from the top of this mountain. They're within 5 miles apart. The transportation was zero to get that stuff together. So we could take that lower grade product and compete equally with the mining companies and the iron companies up north, because they're hauling that stuff hundreds of miles to get it together. So that was one of the reasons that U.S. Steel wanted to make an investment in Birmingham, was because we were such a big competitor, Tennessee Coal and Iron, that they wanted to buy it, to control it, and so that they would not be interfering in their markets. When it shut down, the 3 reasons basically that it shut down was the poor quality. We could get it from South America about 80% for the same or less money than they could mine it here in town. Then you had the geologic faults. As you get further down the dip out into Shades Valley, you start running into geologic faults. So you're mining along and you've got iron ore in front of you, and then just all of a sudden it's gone, because now that geologic fault has moved the iron ore down 250 feet. So you have to back up, put a rock tunnel in to go down, back down to the ore seam, and then pick up mining. And so that, and then another big thing was the introduction of labor unions. Labor costs in Birmingham started going up. So with the increased labor cost, the geologic faults, and the low quality of ore, in 1962, U.S. Steel closed their last 2 mines on Red Mountain. Let's see, Ishkuda number 11 and Winona number 7. That was in 62. Woodward Iron Company had the Pine Mine out in Shades Valley. They held on their mining until 1972, and that was the last iron ore mine to shut down in the Birmingham area. So that's why we don't mine anymore. Now, it's still out there. There's billions of tons of this stuff. In the 1970s, there was a study done to see about the feasibility of putting in a shaft mine in Hoover to go down to the ore and mine iron ore, but that never came about. They decided it was just not economical with the cost of materials and the demand for iron at the time. But that stuff's still out there. If the rest of the world runs out, we still have it.
We have one more question that came in. What percentage of the miners were African American?
You know, I don't have exact statistics on that, but I would say probably 60 to 70%. Now, and it varied.
It varies coal mines and iron ore
Yeah,
mines.
it varies a little bit, but you had Polish people that were immigrated over here. You had Italians. You had people from Wales and northern England, Irish. All those people came over here and had communities in Wylam and Brookside and these places. The Russians had a big
Orthodox
community
Church
in Brookside. So all of the races were included into the mining process here. But yeah, it was probably about 60, I'd say maybe 60% Black African American. And a lot of the conditions that they had were poor back in those days. The companies are in business to make bottom line profits. So in a sense, they would do as little as necessary, but they also went a little more than necessary, because they understood the fact that if there was not a solid home environment for the miner to live in, a nice house for his family, that they weren't going to get any production. Also, they understood that if their miners were sick and could not work, that cut production, so they provided clinics in the mining camp communities. They built local hospitals. So even though there were a lot of things that were going on that were not really the most positive, there were some things that were going on that made life better for all of the miners that they would have never had if it had not been for that.
Yeah, and it was still in the time of segregation. So I mean, like the bathhouses, you had one for African Americans and you had another one for whites. So I mean, there were things like that could have been done better, but that was at the time of segregation.
Yeah, and we've done a lot of talking in communities in the mining camp community areas, and we've talked to a lot of the old African American miners who worked in those mines and lived in it, and they all agreed that within the mining camps there was not nearly as much. There was forced segregation from the companies that you had to live here, you had to live here. But as far as interaction between the people, there was less segregation in the mining camps than when you came out of the camps and went downtown in Birmingham, because they all realized that they depended on each other every day for their livelihood, for their personal safety. They watched each other's backs in the mines. And so within the camps, people got along very well. When you got outside the camps and you had more political push and stuff like that and things, it got a lot worse. But
You depend on, I mean, it doesn't matter who you are. You know, if you go underground, you got to come back up. You know, I'm going to depend on Jeff if he's a green alien.
yeah, well,
You know?
you go underground and you work for 8 hours a day. If you're in an iron ore mine, everybody comes out red. If you're in a coal mine, everybody comes out black. So you know, yeah, people depended on each other. And there were a lot of inequities, and we're still dealing with some of those today, and they need to be. And but it wasn't totally as bad as sometimes it's made out to be. But that's one thing we'll do here is we don't take a side. We will walk down the middle. We will tell you the truth. What happened on this side? What happened on this side? You can take that information and determine the facts. But we're not going to just have an agenda.
Yeah, we're not going to lead you
Underground Birmingham
one way or the other way. I mean, it's like, here's the facts, make your own decision.
Yeah. So, we want the truth out there. We're not trying to paint a picture.
So guys, come check it out. It's open, it's cool, the lighting is incredible. They need your help, they need donations. Help them out. You guys are going to get us a link, we'll throw it up on the page.
Yeah, follow our page and see some of the places we're going. And
We got to show them some of the t-shirts you guys
Yes.
have. So come follow, check out all this stuff that they have in the gift shop.
All right. So we have several t-shirts. We have a whole store that's open daily from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. 7 days a week in the Anvil. So this is one of our shirts that, of course, we love to death. It's one of our best sellers. And we have another one, if you'll go to the next one. This one is actually the sign that you drive by every time. That says, "This Red Mountain Iron Ore is basis of Birmingham's iron and steel industry." And so it's a really cool shirt to wear and just really ties you to Birmingham. And then our next one, it was Vulcan 1938 Park. So this is a really some cool shirts. We also have hats, and so we have some books. We have a really nice book collection as well. So we have, these are just two from our.
This one right here, guys, this one is where we got a lot of history. You want to, if you want to do this right here.
This book by Ethel Army's Story of Coal and Iron in Alabama. When I started doing this back in the 1960s, this was my Bible. Between this and the U.S. Geological Survey Bulletin 400, Iron Ore Fuels and Fluxes of Birmingham District, this is what I used those two books to find every mine in Birmingham between Trussville and Vesper. This was the Bible.
And keep this in mind, it was a girl doing this too. And she was, dude, she's awesome. You guys have to read this. This is really cool. It's got a lot of good stuff, a lot of photos. I didn't mean to interrupt on that. But
Oh, you're good.
I saw her at the back. I'm like, yep.
And then we have another book, but we have also like our book collection comprised of Birmingham history in general, some other specific things, but these are two that's definitely tied into mining. And then we have for kids who love to mine or get them interested, we have a miner's hat. So we have it in 4 different colors. We also have a keychain, but you can come in and get them. And we have our nice model here.
Look, Halloween is coming up. You guys want your kids to look like Jeff Newman.
Oh no, that's not that scary.
Awesome. Well, come and check us out. The Anvil is open from 10 to 6 daily. The Lone Pine Mine entrance will be open so you can peer inside 7 days a week from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. as well. That is included in your admission into the museum so you can learn about the complete history. So thank you guys for coming out today, and feel free to follow all of these pages, and we look forward to talking more about mining.
Well, there's so much to tell, it's hard to even break the surface in an hour. There's just so many details, so we'd love to come back and do it again, and we're going to try to do this fall, organize some hikes around town, and some of y'all can follow along. Unfortunately, we won't be able to go underground, but we can take you to places and tell you about it. And I think Josh has a thing he wants to mention to you.
Oh, I do.
I heard about another book, Josh.
Well, I didn't want to plug anything, for us. This was all about, this was for Vulcan. But, we do have a book coming out on 10/26. You can go to undergroundbirmingham.com. You can pre-order. We have some shirts, masks. There's the shirts, come in different colors, sizes. It kind of helps us offset some cost of doing this, and also helps raise money, that we can help other businesses and places open some of these mines and, talk about the history.
So we're willing to, if you have a group and you want to talk a little bit about some history, we'll do field trips as long as you give me some sweet tea.
Love it. Well, thank you all, and please, for our viewers, if you love programming like this, please provide feedback, chat, send us messages. We would love. This is our first time, and we want to continue doing things like this. So let us know your thoughts. Thank you.
But I will say, if it's not a 5-star, I'm blocking you. It better be 5 stars, guys. All right, I'm done.
Thank y'all very much for coming along today, and we sure enjoyed sharing. I just wish we had more time.
Yes. Thanks. Y'all have a great day. Enjoy.
Bye, guys.
Bye.